Young woman brings lunch daily to a homeless man, unaware he's a dying millionaire seeking someone to inherit. Between the rising steam of her lunchbox and the city's bitter cold, Camilla kneels once again before a man who's never spoken. But today, his eyes tremble, as if hiding a secret too heavy to bear. Camilla Torres hunched her shoulders against the bitter Chicago wind, clutching an aluminum lunchbox against her chest. Steam escaped in small clouds as she exhaled, her thin jacket barely keeping the December chill at bay. The weatherman had predicted snow by evening, but she couldn't afford to miss another shift at the diner. The shortcut under the Franklin Street Bridge saved her 12 minutes. She checked her watch. Enough time. As she approached the shadows beneath the concrete, a now familiar figure came into view. An elderly man wrapped in layers of tattered blankets, his gray beard wild and unkempt, eyes fixed on the ground. Unlike the others who populated the underpass, he never asked for anything, never extended a cup, never made eye contact with passers-by. He simply existed, invisible to the rushing city above. Camilla slowed, then stopped. She knelt before him, careful not to invade his space, and opened her lunchbox. "I made too much again," she said softly, the same words she'd spoken every day for 3 weeks now. The man lifted his eyes, startlingly blue against weathered skin, and studied her face. 1 beat, 2, then a slight nod. She divided her meal, rice, beans, chicken she'd cooked at midnight after her late class, and placed half on the plastic lid. Their fingers never touched during the exchange. "See you tomorrow," she whispered, rising to her feet. He still hadn't spoken a word to her. At the diner, Camilla tied her apron while Rick, the fry cook, smirked from the kitchen doorway. "Still feeding your pet homeless guy?" he asked loudly enough for the other waitresses to hear. Tanya, counting tips at the counter, turned with narrowed eyes. "You're wasting good food on some bum who probably spends whatever cash he gets on booze." "You're not scared?" asked Melissa, the newest waitress. "Some of those people are dangerous. The news said—" "I'm scared of plenty of things," Camilla interrupted, meeting Melissa's gaze. "But I'm most afraid of not being human anymore." The words hung in the air as Camilla grabbed her order pad and headed to her first table. Walking home after her shift, Camilla passed a family huddled in a doorway. A woman and 2 small children trying to escape the wind that now carried flakes of snow. One child, no more than 5, locked eyes with Camilla. She felt her throat tighten as she continued walking, her tip money barely enough for tomorrow's groceries. In the small apartment she shared with her grandmother Alba, Camilla found the elderly woman kneeling beside her bed, hands clasped in prayer. She waited silently by the door until her grandmother crossed herself and rose stiffly. "You're late, mija," Alba said, patting the space beside her on the worn sofa. "Was it busy tonight?" "Not too bad," Camilla replied, sinking into the cushions, her feet throbbing from the double shift. In the quiet comfort of their living room, with its pictures of saints and smell of dried herbs, Alba studied her granddaughter's face. "You still give food to that man under the bridge?" she asked finally. Camilla nodded. "Has he ever thanked you? Even once?" "No, abuela," Alba sighed. "Then why do you keep doing this? We barely have enough for ourselves." Camilla stared at her worn shoes, remembering the blue eyes that seemed to hold an ocean of unsaid words. "Because," she said softly, "sometimes I think he needs to be seen more than he needs to eat." What Camilla couldn't know was how right she was, and that tomorrow everything would change when the man under the bridge disappeared without a trace, taking with him secrets worth millions. Dust motes danced in the slanting afternoon light that filtered through Venetian blinds in an otherwise abandoned office in downtown Chicago. The building itself was scheduled for renovation, but the 18th floor remained untouched, preserved like a time capsule from 7 years ago. Arnold Reeves, approaching 70 with meticulous silver hair and immaculate suits that disguised his age, ran a finger across a manila folder marked Reynolds Victor. The leather chair creaked as he leaned back, examining the faded newspaper clippings spread across his desk. "Transport tycoon missing," screamed one headline. "Reynolds' fortune in limbo as CEO disappears," declared another. Every article featured the same photo. Victor Reynolds at 59, commanding attention in an expensive suit, blue eyes piercing the camera with unwavering confidence. The Reynolds transportation empire had once dominated the Midwest, a fleet of buses, shipping companies, and courier services generating billions. Until one rainy Tuesday, when Victor's only daughter, Camilla Reynolds, lost control of her car on Lakeshore Drive. The investigation ruled it an accident, but rumors of an argument at the family estate circulated among Chicago's elite. 3 days after the funeral, Victor Reynolds vanished. No credit card activity. No passport used. His phone found in a trash can at Union Station. "Sandra," Arnold called to his secretary, "can you bring me the hospital reports again?" The woman appeared with a thin folder. "These came in this morning. Anonymous patient at St. Elizabeth's matching his description. Blood work confirms it's him." Arnold's eyebrows lifted. 7 years of silence, and now this. "He's dying," Sandra added quietly. "Pancreatic cancer. Terminal." "Has he requested contact?" "No. But he's been visiting the same location nearly every day for a month. Always returns to a shelter in Englewood by nightfall." Arnold tapped the folder thoughtfully. "And the $30 billion sitting in trust?" "Still frozen, as per your legal arrangement with Mr. Reynolds. No one can access it without his explicit consent or—" She didn't finish the sentence. Arnold nodded. "Hire someone. I want to know who he's talking to, what he's doing." 3 days later, a private investigator delivered a slim envelope. Inside were photographs of a young Latina woman in a waitress uniform kneeling beside Victor under Franklin Street Bridge, offering food from an aluminum lunchbox. "Who is she?" Arnold asked, studying the images with narrow eyes. "Camilla Torres, 23. Works at Gina's Diner. Nursing student at Chicago Community College. Lives with her grandmother in Pilsen. No criminal record. Pays her taxes. Seems completely ordinary." "Camilla," Arnold repeated, tasting the name. "The same as his daughter." "Yes, sir, but they're not related. We checked. No connection at all. She appears to be feeding him regularly, but there's no evidence she knows who he is." "And he hasn't spoken to her?" "Not that we've observed." Sandra, organizing files in the corner, spoke without looking up. "Maybe he's not searching for an heir," she said. "Maybe he's testing the world to see if anyone still cares without knowing who he is." Arnold stared at the photo again. In it, Victor's gaze was fixed on the young woman's face with an intensity that transcended his ragged appearance. "Double the surveillance," he instructed. "I want to know everything about her, and prepare the paperwork for all scenarios. We need to be ready when he makes contact." What Arnold couldn't know was that his careful planning was already too late. Miles away, under the Franklin Street Bridge, Victor Reynolds had not appeared for his daily meal, and Camilla Torres was about to receive a message that would draw her into a game of fortune and identity she never asked to play. Flurries danced in the air as Camilla hurried beneath the Franklin Street Bridge, her lunchbox warm against her side. The familiar ache in her feet from last night's shift faded with each step, replaced by a small flutter of anticipation. She'd added an extra piece of chicken today, her grandmother's special recipe with lime and garlic. But the usual spot was empty. She stopped, momentarily confused. For a month, the routine had been unwavering. He would be there, silent and waiting. She checked her watch. She wasn't early. "Hello?" Camilla called, her voice echoing off concrete pillars. Only the rumble of traffic above answered. She searched the length of the underpass, peering behind concrete supports and makeshift cardboard shelters. Nothing. The bitter wind whipped around her ankles as she approached another homeless man huddled against the opposite wall. "Excuse me," she said gently. "The older man who stays here. Have you seen him today?" The man glanced up, revealing bloodshot eyes. "You mean the quiet one? With the blue eyes?" Camilla nodded. "Black car took him. Fancy. This morning." He shrugged. Probably the hospital. He's been coughing blood. Her chest tightened. Did he go willingly? Lady, in this cold, anyone would go willingly if it meant a warm bed. Camilla thanked him and walked away, her lunchbox suddenly heavy in her hands. The food she'd prepared would go uneaten. She found herself standing there longer than she should have, watching the empty space, as if he might materialize. She was late to her shift at the diner, mind elsewhere as she took orders and delivered plates. During the afternoon rush, a memory of those blue eyes flashed unbidden, and the coffee pot slipped from her fingers, shattering against the linoleum. "That's coming out of your check, Torres," her manager called from the register. After her shift, Camilla detoured to Chicago Community College where her evening class had been canceled. The campus was nearly deserted, but the maintenance office light still burned. She knocked tentatively. Mr. Greer, the head janitor, looked up from his desk. In his 60s, with dark skin weathered by decades of outdoor work, he'd always been kind to students who couldn't afford textbooks, sometimes finding used copies that mysteriously matched their course requirements. "Camilla, you're here late." She hesitated, suddenly feeling foolish. "I'm looking for someone, a homeless man who stays under Franklin Bridge. Older, with a white beard and blue eyes. Very quiet." Something flickered across Mr. Greer's face. Recognition, quickly masked. "What about him?" "He's gone missing. I usually bring him food and—" "You've been feeding him?" Greer's voice sharpened. "For about a month now. Is that wrong?" Greer sighed, rubbing his forehead. "No, child. That's probably the most right thing anyone's done for him in years." He seemed to debate with himself before adding, "I know him. From a long time ago." "You do? Who?" "I can't say more," Greer interrupted. "Some secrets aren't mine to tell. But if he's gone, maybe that's for the best." Unsettled by the cryptic response, Camilla walked home through darkening streets, the untouched food still in her lunchbox. As she turned onto her street, something caught her eye. A folded paper affixed to her front gate with clear tape. Glancing around the empty sidewalk, she removed it carefully. The paper was thick, expensive, not a takeout menu or advertisement. Unfolding it revealed only a symbol, a stylized R inside a circle, printed in deep blue ink. No words, no explanation. Inside, her grandmother sat at their small kitchen table sorting bills. "Abuela?" Camila asked, showing her the paper. "Have you ever seen this before?" Alba adjusted her glasses and studied the symbol. Her eyes widened slightly. "Where did you find this?" "It was on our gate. What is it?" Alba's fingers trembled slightly as she handed the paper back. "Reynolds Transportation. They operated the school buses when you were little." She paused. "Your mother named you after seeing that logo on the side of a bus. She always said it was the prettiest name she'd ever read." Camilla stared at the symbol, a shiver traveling up her spine that had nothing to do with the winter cold. The coincidence felt too precise, too deliberate. First the man disappears, then this appears. "What does it mean?" she whispered. Alba took her granddaughter's hand. "I don't know, mija. But in my experience, when the past comes knocking, it rarely brings simple gifts." That night, Camilla dreamed of blue eyes watching her from shadows, and of buses carrying passengers to destinations unknown. She couldn't know that by morning a black car would be waiting outside her home, sent by a dying man who'd finally found what he'd been searching for. At precisely 7:15 a.m., a knock at the door startled Camilla from her morning coffee. Alba, still in her robe, peered through the curtains. "Dios mío," she whispered. "There's a man in a uniform outside." Heart racing, Camilla opened the door to find a driver in a crisp black suit and cap. Late 50s, with a neatly trimmed salt and pepper beard, he stood at a respectful distance. "Ms. Torres?" His voice was deep, formal. "I've been sent to bring you to someone who wishes to meet you." "Who?" Camilla asked, instinctively stepping back. "I'm not at liberty to say, ma'am." "But it concerns the gentleman you've been assisting under Franklin Bridge." Camilla exchanged glances with her grandmother. Is he all right? The driver's expression softened slightly. He needs to see you. It's rather urgent. After a hurried conversation with Alba, who insisted on writing down the car's license plate, Camilla found herself in the back seat of a sleek black sedan with tinted windows. They drove north through the city, then west onto highways she rarely traveled, the urban landscape gradually giving way to rolling countryside and small towns. Where exactly are we going? She asked, as they passed a sign for DeKalb County. A private medical facility in rural Illinois, the driver replied. About 20 minutes more. They eventually turned onto a narrow road bordered by tall pines. At its end stood a 3-story building of glass and stone, unmarked except for a small plaque reading Lakeside Retreat. Inside, the air smelled of antiseptic and expensive cologne. No nurses bustled about. No patients occupied the waiting room's leather chairs. The silence felt deliberate, manufactured. This way, please, directed a woman in business attire who appeared from a side corridor. Camilla followed her through a maze of hallways, each turn bringing them deeper into the facility. No room numbers marked the doors. No indication of where they were or where they were going. What is this place? Camilla asked. A private hospital for those who require discretion, came the clipped response. They stopped before double doors at the end of a corridor. The woman typed a code into a keypad, and the doors slid open. Inside, machines beeped steadily around a hospital bed. Clean-shaven and gaunt, the man in the bed bore little resemblance to the homeless person she'd fed for weeks. But those blue eyes, piercing, alert, were unmistakable. You came, he said, his voice stronger than she'd expected. Camilla approached slowly, disoriented by the transformation. Gone were the layers of dirty clothes and the matted beard. This man's hair was trimmed, his face clean, the hospital gown crisp against his pale skin. An IV dripped clear fluid into his arm. It's you, she whispered. He extended a trembling hand, and she took it automatically. His fingers were cold, but his grip surprisingly firm. You gave me what no one else would, he said, eyes never leaving her face. Not pity, not obligation, just kindness without expectation. Before Camilla could respond, the door opened again. A man in an expensive suit entered, his silver hair perfectly styled, his posture rigid with authority. Ms. Torres, he said coolly. I'm Arnold Reeves, Mr. Reynolds' attorney. His gaze swept over her worn jeans and second-hand coat with barely concealed suspicion. I believe there's been some confusion. You shouldn't be here. Arnold, the man in the bed spoke sharply. I invited her. Victor, you're not thinking clearly. The medication is helping me see more clearly than I have in years. Victor turned back to Camilla. Forgive the intrusion into your life. I needed to understand if you were genuine. A doctor entered, chart in hand. Mr. Reynolds needs rest. His condition. Tell her, Victor interrupted. The doctor hesitated, glancing at the attorney. Tell her, Victor repeated, grip tightening on Camilla's hand. Mr. Reynolds has stage 4 pancreatic cancer, the doctor said quietly. He's declined further treatment. We're making him comfortable, but... He didn't finish the sentence. How long? Camilla asked, her voice barely audible. Days, perhaps a week. Arnold stepped forward. Ms. Torres, I must insist you leave. Mr. Reynolds is not in a condition to make decisions about visitors or anything else. Victor's eyes flashed. She stays, Arnold, or I'll have security remove you instead. The tension in the room thickened as the two men stared at each other. Finally, Arnold stepped back, lips pressed into a thin line. Victor turned to Camilla. Will you come back tomorrow? There are things I need to tell you, things only you should hear. Confused but unable to refuse the plea in his eyes, Camilla nodded. I'll bring lunch, she said softly, just like always. A ghost of a smile touched Victor's lips. I'd like that. As she turned to leave, Arnold blocked her path, voice low enough that only she could hear. Whatever game you're playing, it won't work. Victor Reynolds is worth $30 billion, And I've spent 7 years protecting that fortune from people exactly like you. Camilla met his gaze steadily. I don't know who Victor Reynolds is. And until 5 minutes ago, I didn't know the name of the man I've been feeding under a bridge all month. She walked past him, heart pounding. Outside the hospital, standing alone in the winter sunshine, one question echoed in her mind. What could a dying billionaire possibly want from a waitress who'd shared her lunch? The next morning, Camilla packed the lunchbox carefully. Homemade chicken soup, cornbread, and sliced apples. Foods that might appeal to someone ill. The driver was already waiting when she emerged from her apartment. This time, the journey to the unmarked hospital felt slightly less surreal. The same woman met her at the entrance, but instead of escorting her immediately to Victor's room, she directed Camilla to a small conference room where a contract and pen lay waiting. A non-disclosure agreement, the woman explained. You're not to discuss Mr. Reynolds, this facility, or anything you hear with anyone. Camilla signed, wondering what secrets warranted such precaution. When she finally entered Victor's room, she found him sitting up, looking marginally stronger than the day before. You actually brought lunch, he said, eyes crinkling at the corners. She unpacked the containers on the small bedside table. I said I would. Most people say many things they don't mean. He inhaled the steam from the soup. Especially to dying men. An awkward silence fell. Camilla broke it first. Why did you disappear? And why were you under that bridge? Victor studied her face before answering. Do you believe in penance, Camilla? I was raised Catholic, so yes. 7 years ago, I had everything. Money, power, respect. His voice grew distant. And a daughter. Her name was Camilla, too. Camilla's spoon clattered against the bowl. Your daughter shared my name? He nodded, pain washing over his features. She was 26, brilliant, headstrong. Just finished her MBA and ready to take over the company. His hands trembled slightly. We argued that night about the direction of the business. I wanted to sell to a conglomerate. She wanted to transform it. Make it more ethical, environmentally conscious. What happened? Camilla asked softly. Words were said that couldn't be taken back. She stormed out, drove too fast in the rain. His voice broke. The investigator said she died instantly when her car hit the barrier. But I know the truth. It wasn't the crash that killed her. It was me. My pride. My unbending will. Tears formed in his eyes. 3 days after her funeral, I withdrew $100,000 in cash, changed my clothes in a gas station bathroom, and walked away from everything. I wanted to understand what it meant to have nothing, to be invisible, to atone. And did you? Find atonement? He shook his head. Not until a young woman with my daughter's name knelt before me and offered food without wanting anything in return. Camilla felt a strange tightness in her chest. My name. It's just a coincidence. Is it? Victor asked. Your mother chose it after seeing it on a bus. My buses. My company. His blue eyes held hers. When you told me your name that second week, I thought I was hallucinating. I never told you my name, Camilla said, confusion creeping into her voice. You did. You introduced yourself the 4th time you brought food. Said you figured if we were going to have lunch together regularly, I should know what to call you. Camilla frowned. She had no memory of this. Seeing her confusion, Victor continued gently. The medication sometimes makes you forget things too. What exactly do you want from me? She asked. Nothing. Everything. Victor sighed. My lawyer thinks you're a con artist, who somehow discovered who I was. But that's impossible, because I made sure no one knew. Not even the other homeless people recognized me. Camilla's discomfort grew. I should go. Please, Victor's hand shot out, grabbing hers. I need to tell you about the inheritance. She pulled away. I don't want your money. I don't want your money, Victor repeated, something like wonder in his voice. Do you know how long it's been since I heard someone say that to me? Before she could respond, the door opened, and Mr. Greer, the college janitor, entered, stopping short when he saw Camilla. Michael, Victor acknowledged with a nod. You're early. You know each other? Camilla asked, looking between them. Mr. Greer cleared his throat. I worked for Reynolds Transportation for 30 years, head of maintenance. He's the only person who knew where I was all these years, Victor explained. He helped me disappear and kept an eye on me. And you never told anyone? Camilla asked Greer. Wasn't my secret to tell. Greer's eyes softened. But I did tell him about you. When I saw you helping students who couldn't afford books, staying late to clean up after study groups, giving your lunch to that homeless vet outside the library, he shrugged. Reminded me of someone. Victor nodded. Michael suggested I watch you, see if you were as genuine as you seemed. You've been testing me. Camilla stood abruptly, anger flaring. Playing homeless to see if I'd help? Was any of it real? The cancer is real, Victor said quietly. The homelessness was real too. I've lived on the streets for 7 years, Camilla. That wasn't pretend. She shook her head, overwhelmed. This is too much. I need to go. Before you leave, Victor pressed a small button on his bed rail. A nurse appeared with a tablet. I'd like to record something. A video testimonial. Would you stay for that at least? Against her better judgment, Camilla nodded. As the nurse set up the tablet, Victor's eyes never left Camilla's face. You're not my daughter, he whispered, just for her ears. But in the ways that matter most, you remind me of everything good she was, everything I wish I could have told her. The weight of his words, the burden of expectations she never asked for, pressed down on Camilla as the recording light blinked on, unaware that this video would soon become her salvation and her greatest challenge. 3 days after recording Victor's video, Camilla's phone exploded with notifications. Confused, she opened her social media to find hundreds of messages from strangers, some curious, others openly hostile. Gold digger, read one. How long were you planning this scam? Demanded another. A link led her to a gossip website with the headline, Missing Billionaire Found, Waitress Poised to Steal Fortune. The article described how Victor Reynolds, presumed dead for years, had been discovered and was now allegedly changing his will to benefit a random waitress with no relation to the family. It quoted an anonymous source claiming Camilla had manipulated a mentally compromised old man for financial gain. Her hands shaking, she scrolled through the comments. Bet she researched him before randomly finding him. Another immigrant after American money. Someone should investigate her. The bell above Gina's diner door jangled as Camilla rushed in, already 10 minutes late for her shift. Conversations halted. Customers stared. Behind the counter, her manager beckoned her to the back office. I'm sorry about this, Camilla, he said, not meeting her eyes. But with all this publicity, the owner thinks it's best if you take some time off. Time off? She repeated. You mean I'm fired? He slid her final paycheck across the desk. The customers are uncomfortable. Some are saying they won't come back if... He trailed off. If the gold digger serves their food, she finished bitterly. Outside, a photographer snapped her picture as she left. Camilla, is it true you targeted Victor Reynolds? How did you know who he was? She pulled her hood up and hurried home, only to find Alba in bed, face pale, an untouched cup of tea on the nightstand. Abuela, what's wrong? My heart is just tired, mija, Alba whispered, pressing a weathered hand to her chest. And seeing those terrible things they're saying about you. She closed her eyes. I know your heart. I raised you. You would never do what they claim. Camilla sat beside her grandmother, fighting tears. I was just being kind. I didn't know who he was. The world rarely rewards kindness without suspicion, Alba murmured. A knock at the door made them both jump. Through the peephole, Camilla saw a man in a suit holding an envelope. Reluctantly, she opened the door. Camilla Torres, he asked formally. This is for you. The envelope contained legal papers, a notification of challenge to Victor's amended will, claiming undue influence and diminished capacity. The claimant, Edward Reynolds, Victor's nephew. "What is this?" she asked. "You're being sued, miss," the process server replied matter-of-factly. "Court date's on the first page." Camilla spent the evening disconnecting from social media, turning off her phone, drawing the curtains against curious neighbors. She sat in darkness, wondering how helping a homeless man had spiraled into this nightmare. Near midnight, her landline rang. Only a handful of people had that number. It was Arnold Reeves. "Ms. Torres," his voice was clipped. "I've hired a security specialist to monitor your building. There have been threats. Nothing specific, but precautions are warranted. Why would you help me? You think I manipulated him?" A long pause. "Victor is declining rapidly. He's asked repeatedly about you. Why you haven't returned?" Guilt washed over her. "I can't face all this. The accusations, the lawsuit." "There's something you should know," Arnold interrupted. "Victor is attempting to transfer assets to you directly, bypassing the will entirely. If he succeeds before he passes, challenging it becomes considerably more difficult." "I don't want his money," Camilla burst out. "So you keep saying," Arnold replied, his tone softening slightly. "But be warned, Edward Reynolds is flying in tomorrow. He's less inclined to believe your protests." The next morning, Camilla ventured to campus for what might be her last nursing class. As she approached her locker, whispers followed her through the hallway. Inside was an envelope. Not threatening legal papers this time, but a simple note in familiar handwriting. "Ms. Torres," it read in Mr. Greer's neat script. "I'm sorry for my part in this. Victor meant to honor you, not expose you to this ugliness. If it helps, I believe in you, even if the world doesn't yet. Michael Greer." A tear slipped down her cheek as she folded the note. In the reflection of the metal locker door, she caught sight of herself. Eyes shadowed from sleepless nights, shoulders slumped with the weight of accusations. For a moment, she didn't recognize the person staring back. Walking home through streets that suddenly felt hostile, Camilla realized that the simple life she'd built was crumbling. Her job gone. Her education threatened, her grandmother ill from stress, all because she'd offered food to a hungry man. She could fight the lawsuit, try to clear her name, or she could disappear, change her number, move to another city, start over where no one knew her face or her alleged crime of compassion. As tears blurred her vision, Camilla didn't notice the black car following slowly behind her, or the camera capturing her moment of despair. Images that would soon find their way to Victor Reynolds' bedside, where they would change everything. 3 weeks after Camilla was served legal papers, Victor Reynolds died quietly in his private hospital room. News outlets reported his passing with clinical detachment. Billionaire transport mogul Victor Reynolds, 67, died Wednesday after a prolonged illness. Reynolds, who disappeared 7 years ago following the tragic death of his daughter, leaves behind a contested estate valued at approximately $30 billion. What the news didn't report was the sealed video testimony Victor had recorded days before his death. A video that Arnold Reeves now carried into the Daly Center courthouse in a secure briefcase. Courtroom 302 was packed beyond capacity. Media representatives squeezed into the back rows. Edward Reynolds, a reed-thin man in his 40s with thinning hair and his uncle's blue eyes, sat confidently at the plaintiff's table beside 3 attorneys. Camilla entered last, flanked by Arnold Reeves and a single paralegal. The whispers spread like wildfire as she walked down the center aisle in a modest gray dress borrowed from a neighbor. Her hair was pulled back severely, her face free of makeup, her grandmother's silver cross hanging at her throat. "All rise," called the bailiff as Judge Eleanor Martin entered. A stern woman in her 60s with a reputation for cutting through theatrics. After preliminary statements, Edward's lead attorney approached the bench. "Your Honor, this case is straightforward. My client's uncle, while mentally compromised by terminal illness and years of untreated psychological trauma, was manipulated by Ms. Torres into changing his will. We have evidence she regularly visited him in hospital despite having no family connection or prior relationship before his hospitalization. Judge Martin turned to Arnold. "And the defense?" Arnold stood, unruffled. "Your Honor, we have evidence that not only was Victor Reynolds mentally competent when amending his will, but that his relationship with Ms. Torres predated his hospitalization by months. Furthermore, we have video testimony from Mr. Reynolds himself explaining his decision." "Objection!" Edward's attorney jumped up. "Any video recorded while Mr. Reynolds was under heavy medication cannot be considered reliable." "The video was recorded under medical supervision," Arnold countered. "The attending physician has submitted an affidavit confirming Mr. Reynolds' lucidity at the time." Judge Martin considered briefly. "I'll allow the video. Proceed." The courtroom lights dimmed as a screen descended. Camilla stared at her hands, unable to watch. Victor's face appeared gaunt but clear-eyed. His voice, though weak, carried clearly through the speakers. "My name is Victor Reynolds. I am recording this statement of my own free will, with full mental capacity, as confirmed by Dr. Lawrence Chen." He paused, gathering strength. 7 years ago, after my daughter Camila's death, I abandoned my identity and fortune to live as a homeless man. Not from mental instability, but as a deliberate choice, a form of penance for my role in her death. The courtroom remained utterly silent as Victor described his years on the street, his diagnosis, and how he had first encountered Camila Torres. "For weeks, she brought me food, never asking my name, never taking photos for social media, never seeking recognition. She simply saw a human being in need and responded with kindness." His blue eyes seemed to pierce through the screen. "If my daughter were alive today, I would hope she'd have the same quality of character as Camila Torres. Not by blood, but by soul, by the choices she makes when no one is watching." The video showed Victor lifting a small object, a tarnished lunchbox lid. "This is what she served my food on. I kept it, not because it's valuable, but because it represents the last time in my life I was treated as a human being rather than a fortune." His voice strengthened. "I am of sound mind when I say this. Camila Torres did not know who I was when she helped me. She has never asked for anything in return. And if anyone challenges my decision to leave her my estate, I ask that this video be played in open court so the world can witness what true generosity looks like." The video ended with Victor looking directly into the camera. "To those who will claim she manipulated me, I say this. Camila Torres is the only person in 7 years who saw me when I was invisible. That is worth more than all my billions." The lights came up on a stunned courtroom. Edward Reynolds' face had drained of color. His attorneys huddled in whispered conference. Judge Martin removed her glasses. "That was illuminating." Arnold produced a second item, a USB drive. "Your Honor, we also have surveillance footage from the Franklin Street Bridge, taken over several weeks, showing Ms. Torres's interactions with Mr. Reynolds before she knew his identity." The footage played. Camilla kneeling in snow, dividing her lunch day after day. No words exchanged, no phones out for selfies, just silent compassion. "Finally," Arnold continued, "we have this." He handed the judge a document. "An analysis of Ms. Torres's internet history for the past year. No searches for Victor Reynolds. No research on wealthy missing persons. Nothing to suggest she identified him before he revealed himself." Edward's lead attorney stood. "Your Honor, while this evidence is compelling, we still maintain—" "Enough," Edward Reynolds interrupted, rising. All eyes turned to him. "I'd like to withdraw our challenge to the will." His attorney sputtered. "Mr. Reynolds, I strongly advise—" "No." Edward's voice cracked slightly. "I never really knew my uncle, but watching that video, I recognized him. That was Victor Reynolds speaking, not a confused old man." He turned to Camilla. "I apologize for the accusations. They were unfounded." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Journalists rushed for the exits, already composing headlines. Judge Martin banged her gavel. "Given the plaintiff's withdrawal, this case is dismissed. Miss Torres, the court recognizes your legal right to the inheritance as specified in Victor Reynolds' will. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. The video had already leaked online, going viral in minutes. Public opinion, once viciously against Camilla, shifted dramatically as the footage spread across social media. Arnold navigated Camilla through the crowd to a waiting car. "Well, that was unexpected," he admitted. Edward has never been known for gracious gestures. Camilla stared out the window, watching the city blur past. "What happens now?" "Now? You're officially one of the wealthiest women in America." "I need time," she said quietly, "to think about what to do with all this." Arnold studied her with new respect. "Take all the time you need. The money isn't going anywhere." At home, Alba was waiting anxiously by the window. When Camilla told her the outcome, the elderly woman crossed herself. "Dios works in mysterious ways, mija. But what will you do with such fortune?" Camilla thought of Victor's eyes, how they'd watched her from beneath the bridge, searching for something she hadn't known she was offering. "Something good," she promised. "Something he would be proud of." In her dreams that night, Camilla saw buses with the Reynolds logo carrying passengers toward bright horizons, but she was not among them. She stood apart, watching, a different path unfolding before her that had nothing to do with the name Reynolds and everything to do with the promise of a lunchbox offered in the cold. Cherry blossoms swirled on the April breeze as Camilla crossed the University of Chicago medical campus. No longer in waitress black and white, she wore simple jeans and a sweater, a backpack slung over one shoulder. Only her observant eyes remained unchanged, still watching for those others might miss. 1 year had transformed Camilla's external circumstances while leaving her essential self untouched. The $30 billion inheritance had been transferred, managed, invested, and largely untouched by its beneficiary. "Ms. Torres," Professor Wallace called, catching up to her on the path. "Your research proposal was exceptional. The committee approved full funding." "Thank you," she replied with a genuine smile. "When can I start?" "Immediately. Though I'm curious why someone in your position would bother with research grants at all." His eyes held the question he was too polite to ask directly. Camilla had faced this unspoken inquiry countless times since inheriting the Reynolds fortune. Why attend medical school when you could buy a hospital? Why apply for research funding when you could finance it yourself? "I need to earn my accomplishments," she answered simply. Just like everyone else. What few people knew, what she never discussed in interviews or acknowledged publicly, was that her inheritance remained largely separated from her daily life. She lived in a modest apartment, drove a used car, and paid her tuition through the anonymous scholarship she'd created. The Reynolds billions were at work elsewhere, invisible to most, through a foundation established under a different name. The Scene Foundation operated silently, funding educational opportunities for overlooked students, housing initiatives for the homeless, and medical care for the uninsured. Each month, Camilla visited the Franklin Street Bridge, aluminum lunchbox in hand. She would sit where Victor had once waited, dividing her meal with whoever needed it most that day. The ritual connected her to a promise she'd made to herself, never to forget what it meant to be truly seen. That evening, returning to her apartment, Camilla found her grandmother's rocking chair empty. The silence in the small living room was deafening. 6 months had passed since Alba's peaceful death, but the absence still ached fresh some days. Alba had lived long enough to see Camilla vindicated, to witness her enrollment in medical school, but not to see the graduation that would come in 3 more years. Her last words, "Remember who you are, not what you have," had become Camilla's private mantra. A knock at the door roused her from memories. Michael Greer stood in the hallway, looking older than his years, a weathered leather journal clutched in his hands. "May I come in?" he asked. Over tea at her kitchen table, Greer slid the journal toward her. "Victor wanted you to have this. I was supposed to give it to you after everything settled down, but..." He shrugged apologetically. Timing never seemed right. Camilla touched the worn cover hesitantly. "What is it?" His thoughts. "From those years on the street. He wrote almost every day. Greer's eyes grew distant. Started it the day after his daughter's funeral. Said writing was the only thing that kept him sane some nights. Later, after Greer left, Camilla curled into Alba's rocking chair and opened the journal. Victor's handwriting was precise at first, then increasingly erratic as the years progressed, before steadying again in the final entries. Day 1, the first entry read, "I am no longer Victor Reynolds. That man died with his daughter." She read for hours as rain tapped against the windows, following Victor's journey from wealthy CEO to anonymous vagrant. His struggles with hunger and cold. His observations of a society that stepped around him as if he were invisible. His gradual surrender of pride, identity, and finally, hope. Until a page dated just weeks before she'd met him. "I don't think I'll write much longer. The coughing is worse, blood sometimes, it doesn't matter. No one will read this anyway. No one will remember Victor Reynolds or the nameless man under Franklin Bridge. Perhaps that's fitting justice." Then, dated the day after their first encounter. "A young woman stopped today, Hispanic, maybe early 20s, divided her lunch with me. Didn't speak much, just said she'd see me tomorrow. I don't expect she will." But the next entry confirmed. She came back. Same time, different food. Said her name is Camilla. The universe has a cruel sense of humor. The final pages documented his growing cancer symptoms alongside his observations of Camilla, noting her worn shoes, her tired eyes, how she seemed thinner some days yet still divided her food equally. The last entry, dated the day before he'd disappeared from the bridge, read simply, "I've found her. Not my Camilla, but perhaps the one I was meant to find instead. Tomorrow, I make contact with the old world. God forgive me for what I'm about to do to this kind soul." Tears streamed down Camilla's face as she closed the journal. For the first time since his death, she felt she truly knew Victor Reynolds. Not the billionaire, not the homeless man, but the broken father searching for redemption. Her phone chimed with a news alert. Arnold Reeves had issued a public apology for doubting her integrity, announcing his retirement from legal practice. The media had moved on to fresh scandals, leaving Camilla Torres as yesterday's sensation. She preferred it that way. Fame had never been her goal. Outside her window, Chicago's lights glimmered against the night sky. Somewhere across that vast city, students were receiving acceptance letters with funding from an anonymous donor. Homeless shelters were expanding with grants from an unnamed foundation. Clinics were treating patients who couldn't pay. Camilla smiled for the first time in months. Victor had given her wealth beyond imagination, but the true inheritance was something else entirely. The power to see others, and the means to ensure they were seen. Fall painted the University of Chicago campus in brilliant gold and crimson as Camilla hurried across the quad. 2.5 years into her medical studies, she'd found her calling in palliative care, attending to those for whom medicine could no longer offer cures, only comfort. "Torres," called Dr. Abernathy, her clinical supervisor. "A moment, please." Camilla paused, adjusting the stethoscope around her neck. At 26, she carried herself with quiet confidence, her dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, her lab coat pristine but well-worn. "That terminal patient in room 418, Abernathy said, lowering his voice. "The one who wouldn't speak to any of us. You got him talking about his grandchildren?" Camilla nodded. He just needed someone to listen without checking the time. Abernathy studied her with curious eyes. "You have a gift with these cases. Most students your age are drawn to surgery or emergency medicine, the dramatic saves, the adrenaline. What pulls you toward the dying?" She considered her answer carefully. "Everyone deserves to be truly seen, especially at the end." Abernathy nodded thoughtfully. "Well, whatever your method, keep it up." Mitchell family said it's the first time he's smiled in months. As Camilla continued to her next patient, a first-year student fell into step beside her, Emma Chen, eager and slightly breathless. "It is you, isn't it?" Emma blurted. "From that viral video a couple years ago. The waitress who inherited the Reynolds fortune." Camilla's expression remained neutral. "You've mistaken me for someone else." "No, I'm certain," Emma insisted. "My mom followed the whole case. She cried when that video played in court." She lowered her voice conspiratorially. "Don't worry, I won't tell anyone. But why are you here struggling through med school when you could be anywhere?" Camilla stopped walking, fixing Emma with a direct gaze. "Right now, I need to check on Mrs. Dominguez before her pain medication wears off. That's why I'm here." She continued down the corridor, leaving the flustered student behind. These moments occurred occasionally: recognition, questions, the same puzzlement over her choices. Camilla had learned to deflect gracefully, to redirect conversation back to the work at hand. That evening, while reviewing patient charts in the hospital cafeteria, Camilla noticed a group of students huddled at a corner table. They spoke in hushed tones, occasionally glancing around as if sharing secrets. Nursing student Zoe Williams caught Camilla watching and waved her over. "We're planning Friday's distribution," Zoe explained, showing Camilla a map with red circles marking locations throughout Chicago. 20 volunteers, 10 routes. We should reach about 100 people." Camilla examined the map. "What distribution?" Marcus, a pharmacy student, looked surprised. "The Lunchbox Project. We've been running it for almost a year now. Every Friday, volunteers take food to homeless encampments around the city. No pictures, no social media," added Zoe. "Just food and basic necessities. No questions asked." "Who started this?" Camilla asked quietly. The students exchanged glances. "Nobody knows exactly," Marcus admitted. "It began with anonymous funding and a simple instruction sheet. People just started showing up to help." Camilla felt a strange tightness in her chest. "May I join you this Friday?" That Friday evening, Camilla joined Zoe's distribution route. They moved through the darkening city with thermal bags containing sandwiches, fruit, and hot soup in disposable containers. At each stop, an underpass, a park, a forgotten corner behind the library, they offered food without fanfare, sitting briefly with those who wanted company, moving on quickly for those who preferred solitude. "We don't ask names," Zoe explained as they walked. "Some people share them, some don't. We keep track of locations, not individuals." Camilla nodded, recognizing the wisdom in this approach. The night air carried the first hint of winter's bite as they approached their final stop, Franklin Street Bridge. 3 figures huddled beneath the concrete span, bundled against the cold. Camilla knelt before an elderly woman, offering a container of soup. "Thank you, dear," the woman said, accepting with gnarled hands. "You remind me of another girl who used to come here, years ago now." "Was she part of a program too?" Camilla asked. "No, she came alone. Every day, same time, with her little metal lunchbox." The woman's roomy eyes grew distant. "She'd bring enough for herself and Victor, but sometimes shared with the rest of us too." Camilla's heart quickened. "Victor?" Quiet man, blue eyes, kept to himself. The woman sipped the soup. "One day he vanished. Heard later he was some big shot who'd been hiding out. Imagine that. Did you ever see the girl again, after he left?" The woman shook her head. "Life goes on, dear. People come and go under this bridge." Walking back to campus, Zoe studied Camilla's face in the streetlight. "You okay? You got quiet back there." "Just thinking about cycles," Camilla replied. "How things come full circle." Later that week, Dr. Abernathy approached Camilla after class. "The fellowship committee requested an interview with you. Hopkins Palliative Care Research is interested." "That's unexpected," Camilla stammered. "I didn't apply." "Someone nominated you." Abernathy handed her an envelope. "Your clinical work has apparently caught attention in the right places." That evening, a different envelope arrived at her apartment, thick cream stationery with an embossed Forbes logo. The magazine was planning a 30 under 30 feature and wanted to profile the unexpected heiress who had eschewed luxury for medical service. Camilla declined both opportunities with the same response. The work matters more than who does it. She understood what these invitations represented, the world's attempt to categorize her, to make her story consumable. The rags to riches narrative, the noble heiress, the reluctant billionaire with a heart of gold. None captured the truth she lived daily, that her inheritance wasn't measured in dollars, but in perspective. The ability to see value where others saw only need. Professor Harden stopped her after anatomy lab the following Tuesday. That patient from St. Mary's Hospice can't stop talking about you. Says you're the only one who doesn't treat him like he's already gone. Camilla smiled softly. Mr. Rodriguez just needs regular chess opponents. He beats me every time. Well, whatever you're doing, keep it up. Harden hesitated. The other students notice, you know, how you are with terminal patients. Some of them have started following your lead. That night, Camilla stood at her apartment window watching the city lights. 3 years since Victor Reynolds had changed her life. And still she was learning the dimensions of that change. It wasn't about money. It had never been about money. It was about seeing, truly seeing, the people in front of you. She touched the worn leather of Victor's journal on her nightstand, thinking of his final entry. What would he think of her choices? Of the quieter path she'd chosen? Her phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. New location added for Friday. Senior Center in Pilsen. You in? Camilla smiled as she typed her reply. Always. In the darkness of her apartment, with the city humming beyond her window, she wondered if Victor had found the peace he sought, and if, in some way, she was continuing the journey he had begun beneath that bridge on a cold Chicago morning. 5 years to the day after Victor Reynolds' death, golden autumn light spilled across the university commons. Students sprawled on the lawn, savoring the last warm days before winter descended on Chicago. Among them, a slender young woman in a second-hand jacket unpacked her lunch on a bench. 20 years old, with close-cropped dark hair and determined eyes, Daniela Ferreira balanced textbooks on her knees as she ate. At the edge of the grassy area, partially hidden by the library's shadow, sat a man in dirty clothes. His beard was matted, his coat several sizes too large, his eyes fixed on the ground before him. The students flowed around him, a human river parting around an invisible obstacle. No one approached. No one acknowledged his presence, except Daniela. Gathering her courage, she crossed the lawn and stopped before him. Without a word, she divided her sandwich, offering half on a napkin. The man looked up, startled by the gesture. His eyes, a washed-out blue, searched her face for mockery or pity, finding neither. He accepted with dirty fingers. Why? He asked, his voice rough from disuse. Daniela shrugged. Because you're here. Because I have enough. She sat beside him, not too close, and they ate in companionable silence. When she rose to leave, she simply said, "Same time tomorrow?" The man nodded, something like wonder in his tired eyes. What Daniela couldn't see was the paper clutched in his other hand, worn from constant folding and unfolding. On it, a name was written in elegant script. Camilla. Across campus in the medical building, Dr. Camilla Torres examined scans with a resident. At 31, she carried the quiet authority of someone who had found her purpose. No wedding ring adorned her finger, but a simple silver chain, her grandmother's cross, hung at her throat. The pain management protocol you developed is showing remarkable results, the resident said. Quality of life improvements across all metrics. Camilla nodded, attention focused on the patient's file. Let's adjust the medication schedule. I want to minimize sedation while maintaining comfort. Dr. Torres? A nurse appeared at the door. Your 2 o'clock is ready. The patient, an elderly man with advanced pancreatic cancer, smiled weakly as Camilla entered his room. The famous Dr. Torres, he said. They tell me you're the best. I just listen well, she replied, pulling a chair close to his bed. That's more than most do. He studied her face. You look familiar. Have we met before? I don't think so, Camilla said gently. But I'm here now. Tell me about the pain you're experiencing. After her rounds, Camilla stopped by the administration office where a secretary handed her an envelope. Another donation, the secretary explained, for your scholarship fund. Inside was a check from the Scene Foundation, the organization Camilla had established with the Reynolds fortune. The money moved in a careful circle, from the foundation to scholarships, grants, and healthcare initiatives, never directly connected to her name. Near sunset, an old friend waited outside the hospital entrance. Michael Greer, now fully retired and walking with a cane, smiled as Camilla approached. 5 years, he said simply. She nodded. They had met like this each year on the anniversary of Victor's death. Walk with me? She asked. They strolled through the university grounds, comparing observations about the changing campus, the new buildings, the fresh faces. Victor would be proud, Greer said finally, of what you've done with his legacy. Camilla watched students hurrying to evening classes. I never used his name. That's why he'd be proud. Greer chuckled. The Reynolds name was just letters on buses and buildings. What mattered was what it stood for. They paused near the library, where a dedicated plaque had been installed the previous year. It bore no name, just a simple inscription. Because someone saw me. You know, Greer said, nodding toward the bench where Daniela had sat earlier. There's a girl who's been feeding a homeless man there all week. Reminds me of someone. Camilla smiled. The world is full of kind people, if you know where to look. This one's special, though. Greer's eyes twinkled. She's one of your scholarship recipients, Daniela Ferreira, full ride from the Scene Foundation. Something tightened in Camilla's chest. Is she? Life has a funny way of coming full circle, Greer observed. Later that evening, a nurse at Chicago Memorial Hospital handed a thick envelope to a young intern. Scholarship award, she explained. Anonymous donor, full medical school funding. The intern's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside, a simple note read, "Because someone believes in you. CR." Across the city, in her modest apartment overlooking the park, Camilla Torres stood at the window. The journal Victor had left her lay open on the table, a passage underlined. True wealth isn't measured by what you have, but by what you give away without expecting return. Below, streetlights illuminated the paths where people hurried home. Among them, invisible to most eyes, were those without homes to return to, the overlooked, the forgotten, the unseen. But somewhere on those streets, a young woman was noticing. A sandwich was being shared. A connection was being made. The wheel had turned. The legacy continued. And no one, not even Camilla herself, fully understood how many lives had changed, because one cold morning, she had knelt beside a stranger and offered half her lunch. In the end, Camilla didn't just inherit a fortune, she inherited a purpose. Her simple act of kindness changed a life, and that life changed hers in return. This story reminds us that true wealth lies not in what we possess, but in what we choose to give, even when no one is watching. Who around you might be silently waiting for a gesture that could change everything? And tell us, what did you think of this story? If you felt touched, don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell, like the video, and comment below telling us which country or city you're watching from. It helps us bring you even more meaningful stories. And if you haven't yet, click the next video showing up on your screen now. Thank you so much for watching.